Wyoming Territory, 1879. The wind beat against the side of the Lark family cabin like it meant to tear it down. Tessa Lark braced her shoulder harder into the door, holding it shut as the storm howled. "Get the pot off the stove!" she yelled without looking back. A pair of small boots thudded across the wooden floor. "Got it!" her 10-year-old brother Oliver called, his arms wobbling under the weight of their supper. Tessa waited until the wind calmed before sliding the bolt into place and stepping back. The door held, just barely. She exhaled hard, brushing her damp hair from her face. Her hands were raw from chopping wood and her arms ached, but the fire was burning and her brother was safe. That was enough, for now. Their father had died the winter before, and their mother had not survived the fever that came with the spring thaw. Neighbors talked plenty, but no one stepped forward to take in 2 half-grown children on a homestead tucked 5 miles from the nearest town. Tessa was 19. Oliver was 10. That was all anyone saw. Too young. No good future. She had heard it over and over. "She's too stubborn. She should sell and leave. She'll run that boy into the ground trying to live like this." But they did not see what she saw. Oliver with his wide eyes and quiet strength. The land their father had bled into. The way the pines whispered at dusk, like they remembered the people who had tried to tame them. Tessa had no intention of leaving. That was what she told herself until she found the blood. It was near the creek behind the cabin. Thick smears in the snow, too much for an animal. Then the drag marks boots. She followed them down the ridge and found the man. He was half buried in the snow, slumped against a tree. A scout's coat, torn and soaked through. His breathing was shallow, face pale under a week's worth of beard. One leg was bandaged, but the binding was soaked through and frozen stiff. Tessa dropped to her knees. "Hey, can you hear me?" The man stirred, eyes fluttering open. They were green, sharp even through the haze of pain. "I am not dead?" he asked, voice rough as gravel. "Well, you will be if you stay out here." She looked over the wound. "You walk on this?" "Crawled." He shut his eyes again. "Horse spooked. Broke my leg. Took my maps." Tessa's heart beat faster. "You are a scout?" "Was." He coughed. "Wes McGraw." "Tessa Lark," she said, already pulling off her shawl. "Come on. You are not dying in my woods." She got him up with a lot of effort and her brother's help. Wes barely stayed conscious as they dragged him into the cabin, but he did not fight her. Oliver stared, wide-eyed, as she set to work boiling water and cutting away the ruined bandage. "You sure about this?" he whispered. "Would you leave him out there?" Oliver shook his head. 3 days passed before Wes could sit up. On the 4th, he tried to stand and nearly hit the floor. Tessa caught him. "You are not going anywhere." Wes gritted his teeth, leaning heavy on her shoulder. "I cannot stay here, then die outside." "Door's right there," she said, jerking her chin toward the frost-covered wood. He looked at her, and something flickered behind his eyes. Not surprise, not anger, something quieter. Respect. "You are stubborn," he said. "I have been told." By the next day, he let her help him without protest. She noticed the way his hands trembled when he reached for the cup, the way his body tensed when thunder cracked through the hills. He had seen things. She did not ask. He did not offer. But he watched her. When she split logs. When she taught Oliver how to lash the fishing line. When she pressed snow to her face just to stay awake. "You do not stop," he said one night, voice low as he sat by the fire. "No one else is going to do it," she said. Oliver was asleep, curled near the flames. Tessa sat across from Wes, her hands wrapped around a tin cup. Wes shifted. "You should not have brought me in." "Why? I have blood on my hands." "Not all of it deserved." Her voice stayed even. "Then you fit right in." Wes stared at her, then laughed short and rough, but real. You are something else. 2 weeks passed. Wes helped her fix the barn roof once he could stand. He taught Oliver how to spot tracks in the snow, how to listen to the wind. He carved a new handle for the kitchen knife and reinforced the hinges on the door. I thought you were leaving, Tessa said one night as she caught him checking his saddlebag. I was, he said without looking up. And, he straightened, ran a hand through his hair. I do not know. Tessa kept her voice steady. You do not owe us anything. No, he said, but I owe myself something. I have not felt steady in a long time. She stepped closer, her breath hitching. You think I have? He looked at her then, really looked. You have not run from any of it. I have a little brother who needs me. And who do you have? She blinked, throat tight. No one. Wes reached out, brushing a thumb against the edge of her jaw. You have me. She did not answer, but she did not step back either. The snow began to melt. The creek ran louder. And Wes stayed. He repaired the fence. He hunted when food ran low. He held Oliver steady when the boys' nightmares came. He listened. He stayed. And Tessa, who had been called too stubborn, too proud, too much, let herself lean. Just a little. One morning, she found him outside, shirt damp with sweat despite the chill, trying to split logs with one hand. She walked up behind him. You are going to tear out your shoulder. He turned. You always this bossy? Only when someone is being stupid. He laughed again, fuller this time. You keep talking to me like that, I might stay forever. She stepped closer. Wes. He dropped the axe, took her hand. I was half dead when you found me. I did not care if I lived. Then I saw you fighting the world with fire in your eyes and a little brother on your back. And I thought, I want to live. Tessa stared at him, heart-thudding. You are not just saying that. No. I am saying I need you. And I want to stay. If you will have me. She reached up, cupped his face. You already are here. And when he kissed her, it was not rushed or desperate. It was sure. It was slow. It was everything she had never let herself hope for. Wes pulled back, breath warm against her lips. You were not too stubborn, he said. She smiled. You just needed someone strong enough to match you. And together they crossed the yard, hand in hand, toward the cabin where a new life waited, one built on quiet trust, hard work, and the kind of love that roots itself deep and never lets go. The thaw came slow that year. Mud clung to boots, to wagon wheels, to the hooves of the mule Wes had traded for in town with some of the silver he'd once carried for reconnaissance pay. The snow was receding from the pines in thin, wet ribbons, but the nights still dropped below freezing. Inside the cabin, the air smelled of tallow soap and damp wool. Tessa sat near the hearth, mending the hem of Oliver's only good coat. Her needle moved steady even when Wes dropped the sack of oats beside her with a grunt. They raised prices again, he said, wiping his hands on his trousers. Said the railways stalled east of Rawlins. Less freight getting through. She didn't look up. So we plant more barley. Maybe trade with the McKellans for early seed. They'd want chickens for that. We've got 4 roosters and only need 1. She tied off her thread, bit the end clean, and finally glanced at him. You think I can't haggle? No, Wes said, easing down beside her. I think you already did. Before I got here. She let the corner of her mouth lift just a little and leaned back against the wall. The fire cracked low between them. I heard from the general store, he said after a pause. Words come out of Fort Bridger. Captain Monroe's dead. He was the one assigned to the reservation patrols. She folded her hands in her lap. That name means something to you? He was the last one who ordered me out before I left the service. Sent me into Wind River with a map drawn by a man who'd never seen a pine tree, let alone the Shoshone Range. You followed it? I had no choice, Wes said. But I didn't obey the rest. I saw what they were doing. Burning food stores. Breaking up families. I walked away before I could be part of it. Tessa watched the coals shift under the iron grate. You still carry it, though. I guess I do. Oliver's voice came from the ladder. Is it safe to come down? Tessa stood, brushing her skirt. Come on. We've got eggs to gather. As the boy descended, Wes caught her wrist lightly. There's a rider coming from the south. I saw dust on the trail. She nodded once. I'll ready the rifle. The man who arrived wore a trail-worn duster and a badge on his chest. He dismounted slow, eyes flicking between the cabin and the barn. Tessa stepped out before Oliver could. "You need something?" she asked, fingers resting on the rifle's smooth stock. "Name's Deputy Harlan Bixby. I'm tracking a deserter. Name's Wesley McGraw." Behind her, the door creaked. Wes stepped out, hands empty but shoulders squared. "I'm him," he said. "But I walked out 4 years ago. Records should show I was cleared after inquiry." "They don't," the deputy said. "Judge out of Cheyenne's got a price on your name. Says you refused orders in a time of conflict." Wes didn't flinch. "And the judge know those orders were to torch a winter settlement?" "Not my job to weigh that," the deputy said. "Just to bring you in." Tessa didn't lower the rifle. "We've got a boy here. We don't need trouble." "I don't want any," Bixby said. "But if he refuses, I've got the right to take him by force." Wes stepped forward. "I'll go." "No," Tessa said. "You won't." He looked at her and something passed between them, quiet but solid. "You'll lose everything," he said. "I already lost everything once. I'm not doing it again." Bixby exhaled, looked down at the dirt around his boots. "I'll tell you what," he said. "I ride back through here in 2 weeks. If I see you're keeping to yourself, that you're not gathering men or stirring trouble, I'll say I didn't find you. But if your name comes up again, I won't have a choice." Wes nodded. "That's more than fair." The deputy mounted and turned his horse downslope. No one spoke until the sound of hooves faded. Tessa set the rifle against the porch beam. "You were going to give yourself up. I won't bring danger to you." "You already did," she said. "But I'm not afraid of it. I'm afraid of losing what we've built here." He took her hand. "Then I won't leave." "Not unless you tell me to." "I won't," she said. "But you'll need to be careful." "I will." That night, Oliver rolled over in his bedroll by the hearth. "Is the man with the badge coming back?" "He might," Wes said softly. "But we're ready. You're not scared." "I've been scared before," Wes answered. "But I'm not anymore." Tessa lay awake long after the fire died down, listening to the wind press against the west wall. She thought of the moment Wes had stepped between her and danger, unarmed, unafraid. Not because he didn't care what happened to him, but because he did. Because he cared what happened to her, to Oliver, to the fragile thing they were building. And she knew as the embers cooled beside her that he wasn't just staying. He belonged. The first buds broke open on the cottonwoods just after the last hard frost passed. The air still cut cold in the morning, but by midday, sunlight pooled in the hollow behind the cabin where the creek ran strongest. Tessa stood ankle-deep in meltwater, lifting a bent sluice gate, sleeves damp and skirt pinned up above her boots. Wes crouched on the bank, fastening new rope to the post she'd installed. "You could have just left it open," he said, testing the knot. "And let it flood the lower beds?" "No. Needs to flow slow." He looked up at her. "You always think 5 steps ahead? Only when the first 4 won't be enough." Wes leaned back on his heels, watching her wade toward the edge. "You ever think about what comes after all this?" She stepped out and shook the water from her hem, brow furrowed. "After what?" "After proving you can hold it all together. After surviving." Tessa sat beside him on the creek's edge. "I don't know. I grew up thinking survival was just what life was." Wes nodded slowly. "But it doesn't have to stay that way." She looked at him, the lines around his eyes still sharp as ever, though something in him had loosened with the warming days, less guarded, more present. "I guess I hadn't thought far enough ahead to picture anything quieter than this," she said. He picked up a flat stone and passed it between his fingers before tossing it. Skipped once, twice, then sank. "I have." She turned to him, surprised. "You?" "I used to think maybe I'd settle out near the bighorns. Build something small. Raise goats, maybe? Nothing too loud. Just enough to keep my hands busy and my mind clear." Tessa gave a quiet laugh. "Goats, Wes? They're stubborn," he said, glancing sidelong. "Figured I'd get along with them." A silence settled, not heavy but thoughtful. She twisted a blade of grass between her fingers. "You ever want to see more of it?" she asked. "The country. I've seen too much of it already. Enough to know this spot's better than most." She let the silence stretch again, then said, "You still keep watch at night. Even when you think I'm asleep." "I know," he said. "Habit. I don't mind. But you can lay it down, Wes. Whatever you're still carrying." He didn't answer right away. "Then that's harder than walking away from the army ever was." "I know," she said. "But I've started to lay things down too. It's not weakness. It just means you're ready to build something." They stood together and walked back toward the cabin, where Oliver knelt in the dirt garden row planting onion sets one by one. "Did you help him set the rows that straight?" Wes asked. "No," Tessa said. "He measured them. Said he wanted them right. He's going to be better than both of us." She smiled. "That's the plan." That night, as the moon rose full above the pines, Wes sat on the porch sharpening the hoe blade. Tessa joined him, quilt wrapped around her shoulders. "Oliver's asleep," she said. "He asked about you." "What did he want to know?" "If you were going to stay through summer." Wes looked down at the whetstone in his hand. "I want to." She didn't speak, just waited. "I want to stay through planting and harvest. Through fall and the first frost. Through every season that's left in me," he said. "Not because I owe you. Not because I don't have anywhere else to go. Because when I think of a life I'd want, it starts here. With you." The tension in her shoulders eased, but she didn't cry. She never cried. Instead, she pulled her hand from the quilt and reached for him. "I want that too," she said. "But not just words. I want to build it. Nail by nail. Row by row." Wes set the hoe down. "Then let's do that. Together." She leaned into him and he wrapped the quilt around them both. The night air pressed cool against their skin, but inside that shared warmth it didn't matter. They didn't speak again until the fireflies rose from the grass and the last of the sharpening tools were stilled. And when they finally went inside, it was as two people no longer fighting the land or the past alone, but as partners ready to make something lasting, steady, and their own. The morning sun came through the window in long, pale beams, catching on the fine dust that floated in the still air of the cabin. Tessa stood at the table kneading bread, her sleeves rolled up to the elbow, the dough tacky but smooth beneath her palms. Wes leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, his eyes on the slope behind the barn. "There's a blacktail buck moving through the east trees," he said. "Could bring it down easy if we're low on salt meat." "We'll be fine another week," Tessa said. "But if you're getting restless, I won't stop you." He looked back at her. "Restless isn't the word. But I can't sit still all day." "You never could." "That a complaint?" She pressed the heel of her palm into the dough, then glanced up. "It's an observation." From outside, the sound of hammering echoed across the yard. Oliver was fixing the goat shelter using the old wagon wood Wes had salvaged. Tessa watched him through the window for a moment, then wiped her hands on her apron. "He's not gotten sick once this spring," she said. "That's a first." Wes stepped closer. "You've kept him fed and warm. That's more than most boys get. He's growing fast." "I had to let out his sleeves again. Won't be long before he's taller than both of us." She nodded, but her gaze stayed on the boy. "He needs more than work and warm bread, Wes. He needs to know he's safe. That this holds." "It does," Wes said. "And it will." She turned to face him. Her eyes, always sharp, held something softer now. Not doubt, but the weight of knowing how thin the line was between peace and the world beyond their fence. "Then we need to make this official," she said. Wes blinked. "You mean?" "I mean folks will talk less if they know you're my husband. Not just the man who lives in the back room." He stepped forward slowly. "You want that. I wouldn't have said it otherwise." A quiet settled between them, filled only by the rhythmic sound of Oliver's hammering. Wes reached for her hand, his fingers rough, warm. "I want to stand beside you, not just in the field, but in front of whatever comes next. I'll take your name if that's what it takes." She almost laughed. "That won't be necessary." He lifted her hand to his mouth and kissed her fingers, one by one. "Then say when." "After planting," she said. "We'll need the extra hands through to mid-May. Then we can ride into Lander. There's a circuit judge there next month." "I'll give him the truth," Wes said. "That I came here broken and left whole." "You didn't leave," she said. "You stayed." That night, Oliver fell asleep over his copybook, his head tipped sideways on the table. Tessa laid a blanket over his shoulders. then crossed to where Wes stood at the back door, watching the stars. "There's something else," he said. "I didn't want to say it until I was sure." She waited. "I sent word to an old friend. He's with the surveyors now, running lines west of here. If he answers, he might be able to clear my name for good with record from the field. Testimony." Her lips parted, but she didn't speak right away. "If that happens," he went on, "I could buy the land next to yours. Not because I want to live apart, but because it'd give us room to grow cattle, maybe. A proper barn. You think that far ahead? I do now." She stepped into him, wrapping her arms around his middle. His chin came to rest on the top of her head. "I never thought I'd want more than what we had," she said. "But now I do." "Then we'll take it," Wes said. "Slow. One season at a time." Outside, the wind stirred the pine branches, and somewhere in the distance, a night bird called once, low and clear. Inside the cabin, the fire burned steady. In the quiet, with her face against his chest and the warmth of his arms around her, Tessa felt it not just safety, but something deeper, the rooted, quiet certainty of love lived out each day, not spoken but shown. They left just after dawn, the wagon creaking under the weight of oats and the last of the dried apples they planned to trade in Lander. Tessa wore her mother's shawl, a faded blue wool wrap she hadn't touched since the funeral. Wes had shaved. Not clean, he never did, but enough to look respectable before the judge. Oliver sat between them, knees dusted in flour from the bread he'd wrapped tight in cloth that morning. The road curved through the hills, past stands of aspen just beginning to leaf. They passed a pair of ranch hands fixing a fence line near the river and waved in silence. No one asked where they were going. Folks didn't, not out here where privacy rode close as shadow. At the edge of town, they stopped at a small house with a bell hung over the porch. A woman in a linen apron stepped out, drying her hands on her skirt. "I'll mind the boy," she said, nodding at Tessa. "Wes sent word ahead." Tessa hesitated. "You're sure it won't be trouble? Child's no burden. And I owe your man more than I can repay." Wes gave Oliver a squeeze on the shoulder. "You'll be all right here?" Oliver glanced at the woman, then back at Wes. "Yes, sir." The courthouse sat on a rise, a low building with whitewashed siding and a red door that stuck when pulled. Inside, the judge was an older man with a thick mustache and a voice like dry gravel. He read slow, asked careful questions, and listened longer than most. When Wes handed him the letter from the surveyor, proof he'd refused unlawful orders and had been cleared by field inquiry years before, the judge leaned back, read it twice, and said, "You're free to walk any road you choose, Mr. McGraw." Wes nodded once. "I've already chosen it." When they asked for a civil ceremony, the judge raised his brows but didn't question it. He stood, pulled a small book from the shelf behind his desk, and asked if they had rings. Tessa shook her head. "We've got hands. That's enough." They stood facing each other, fingers clasped, the light from the single tall window catching on the wood floor between them. Wes said, "You already know I've come through fire to get here." Tessa said, "And I've held the line through every storm." He said, "I'll carry nothing in secret." "You'll have all of me," she said, "and you'll never be alone again." The judge cleared his throat. "That's good enough for me." When they stepped outside, the wind had picked up. Tessa lifted her face into it as if she could smell the future in it, clean, sharp, wide open. Back at the house, Oliver was sitting on the porch steps, cheeks flushed from running. He looked up, squinting against the sun. "You're married now?" Wes crouched beside him. "We are." Oliver nodded. "Okay." The woman brought out a tin of biscuits and a jar of plum preserves. No one asked for payment. They ate in the wagon on the ride back, the wind warm against their skin, the road familiar but changed. Planting started the next day. The soil turned easy under the new plow Wes had built from salvaged iron and the head of a broken cultivator. Tessa sowed seed in straight lines, her eyes on the furrows, her back steady. Wes worked beside her, sleeves rolled, his shoulder healed, his silence no longer heavy but full. They built a second coop behind the barn and traded for a milk cow from a man who owed Wes a favor. The calf came in late June, all legs and foolish energy, and Oliver named it Sage. They had their first harvest from the garden by the end of July: beans, onions, and squash. Tessa preserved what she could. Wes smoked meat for the winter. Oliver helped build a smokehouse from riverstone and old cedar planks. By August, the land showed what they'd made of it. Rows straight as fence wire, fences mended, the roof sealed tight, and a cabin filled not just with warmth, but with peace. One evening, Wes found Tessa behind the cabin, her hands cupped around a small carving Oliver's work, a stag with its head lowered, carved from pine. "He left it on my pillow," she said. "He's proud of you," Wes said. "He's proud of us." They walked the ridge together, the sky turning lavender above the pines. At the top, they stopped and looked out over their land. The field shimmered with late light, and the creek caught the sun like silver thread. Tessa reached for his hand. "I never asked for love," Wes said. "Neither did I. But it came anyway. It came steady." They stood there as the sun dipped behind the hills and the wind settled, wrapping around them like a blessing. That winter, they sealed the windows with beeswax and wool, and the cabin stayed warm. Tessa taught Oliver to write in cursive, and Wes read aloud from the few books they had. Sometimes they said nothing at all, just sat near the fire while the snow pressed quiet against the door. When spring came again, the creek ran strong. The land held. And so did they.